the Ron and Brian Podcast. Get ready to fill your ears with the latest news, politics, current events, and whatever else we feel like talking about this week. And now, your hosts, Ron and Brian.
And good afternoon, everybody. It is Sunday night. It's 8 o'clock. It is time for episode 232 of the Ron and Brian Podcast. Looking over at the screen next to me, my best friend, love of my life, Brian. Brian, how are you this week, sir?
I am doing great. I had an amazing weekend. Me and the lady and I went up to visit my sister and saw my nephew, saw my niece.
Nice.
My other niece was still at college, but it was great. It was a family weekend.
Nice.
I think it's very important every now and then to just reconnect with family.
Excellent. Always good to hear.
Absolutely. I see I'm already getting some questions about this pin on my shirt.
Well, I guess we'll get to the new merch piece a little later in the show. I think that's a little tease, a little tickler,
tease, yes.
if you will.
We did make some new merch this very recently, and I hope that it is something that is as resounding with the audience as all of our previous items.
All right, sounds good. Well, let's get rolling here. Let's start things. Oh, are you interrupting me already?
I would like to interrupt you once because it's very important to everyone how I'm doing, Ron. But it's more important to me to know how you are doing.
You know, I'm all right. It's been a week, and it's going to be another week. So I'm ready to delve into everything that has happened, everything that's going to happen, and everything that will be. If that makes sense.
All right. Then I think we need to just, we have so much to lined up.
We do.
There's so many stories. I think we just need to just, end the chit chat and let's go right into it.
All right, let's get started with Drink of the Week.
Drink of the week.
Na zdrowie!
Salud.
Drink of the week.
Friendship.
Drink of the week. Drink of the week. Drink of the week.
All right, Brian, what are you drinking this week, my friend?
All right. I know how much you like to keep it local. You do very well with your local Pennsylvania breweries.
Yes.
And I know that I have kind of gone international lately. Last week, I tried for the very first time a very interesting international beer, Le
Yes.
This week, I'm taking it local again, going to our good friends from Brooklyn, New York.
Oh.
Let me see if I could line this up properly. This is from Little Blind Brewing Company, Brooklyn, New York. This is something called Poly Sun IPA, and it's just a beautiful golden hue. Can you see how beautiful this is? It's
nice.
hazy. I'm not going to lie, it is hazy. This is a New England IPA. It's brewed with Heidelberg malt, generously dry hopped with Mosaic and Sabro, coming in at 7.7 ABV, 10 IBU, and 1 I love you, Ron. This beer is going down my belly.
All right, take a sip. Let us know how it is.
I'm going to tell you something. I've not had a real IPA in a while. I've been on a lager Pilsner kick. This is absolutely delicious. Definitely a citrusy flavor to it. Nice and hazy. 7.7 is always going to lead you in the right way. Ron, what are you bringing in?
So as you said, I do like to go local, pulling something out of the beer fridge from last season from our friends at Broken Goblet from their Wasteland Wanderer series. This is their Candy Cane Nitro Pastry Stout. Of course, with lactose, you wouldn't expect anything less. Clocking in at a solid 6.4%. Dark like the night. I mean, look at that. That is a thick beer right there, but very tasty. I remember it from last fall.
Ron, walk us through this again.
Still good. Still, you still get the lactose. You still get the peppermint from the candy cane. Just a very solid stout. Again, part of Broken Goblet's Pastry Stout series. I'm always a fan. You're always a fan. Go out and get yourself some.
Always a fan, Ron. Always a fan.
William letting us know he was down at Love City Brewing in Philly last night. Another great local brewery. So if you're out and about in Philly, always hit up Love City as well.
I would like to thank William for the invitation to go
no,
to Love
good.
City Brew. I mean, I'm sure he reached out to you, Ron, and said, "Hey, I'm going to be at a local. I'm in Philly. I'm
Right.
only mere. I'm a few miles away from you. Would you please? Would you be interested in joining me?"
I'll have to. I don't see it offhand, but let me go through my texts, my DMs,
Sure.
my Snapchats, my Instagrams. See if there's anything in there.
I'm sure that it was a Facebook Messenger.
Very possible.
Because we both know just how much William Esquire prefers to communicate through Facebook Messenger. Do you recall he said something about how he always wanted Papa Zuck to know what his inside thoughts were?
Makes sense. Really makes sense to me. Well, let's get into our inside thoughts, Brian. It's time for Beef of the Week.
Ron and Brian's Beef of the Week.
Brian, what's bothering you this week?
First off, is a Beef of the Week apology. I believe
Really?
this is only the second time
It's
in
very
our
rare.
30 plus year history of doing the show that we've needed to issue an apology. Last week, for those that were paying close attention, my Beef of the Week was AMC Plus and the low quality audio file that was attached to the video stream of the original Halloween from 1978 that I tried to watch on Halloween night a little bit over a week ago. It was recently pointed out to me that I needed to issue an apology. Okay, this is a little rough. The first thing was that I was complaining about AMC Plus, which is a paid streaming service.
Right.
It was brought to my attention by the officials that I am not currently paying for AMC Plus, that I am using a login credentials of somebody that I know. So I actually have no place to complain about the quality of AMC Plus streaming services. This same official later, and I like to be fact checked,
Sure.
also looked at the Amazon Prime account that was charged $3.99 for Halloween. And it was also proven to me that I am not paying the $3.99, that I ordered it on an account that was not mine. So last week, I was complaining about having poor quality on AMC Plus. I was complaining about having to pay $3.99 to rent Halloween on Amazon, when it actually turned out that I was getting both for free and that I needed to STFU. So I wanted to issue an apology to all those who had to listen to me rant and issue a beef over something that I had no business discussing. My complaint this week, Ron, is with people who don't vote and yet feel absolutely empowered to complain about the political system and the politicians that are in power. This past week, and we do have some items to discuss about this most recent midterm election.
Sure.
However, I will say that my Twitter feed, my Facebook feed were filled with people who were complaining about politicians and yet openly were confident and proud to point out how they do not vote and they're not participating in the process, but feel absolutely comfortable to complain about the political outcomes of elections. And I feel that the American system is far from perfect. However, I do believe it is a representative democracy. So the number of votes and voices that are not heard every November, in many cases, if combined, would outweigh the number of voices that are captured in the votes. And I think that as Americans, we owe it to ourselves and to our forefathers and foremothers, in this case, to go out and let our voices be heard, even if it is not a vote for a Democrat or a Republican, but a third party. It is, it's a sad testament that this is supposedly one of the greatest countries on the planet, yet so many of our citizens do not participate in the political electoral system.
It's
Ron?
important to get out there, Brian.
Absolutely. I'm glad you agree with me.
Yes. Have a sip. You've earned it.
Ron, what's bothering you?
So my beef this week, Brian, is when you need to say goodbye to a close family member. Even worse, a close furry family member, which we had to do here this week at the Ron and Brian podcast. My best feline friend, Walker, up on the screen here, had some rough few months medically, and we determined this past week that the most humane thing was to let him go. So he has left us. He was a great cat. You said it best. You said Walker was a real one, and
yeah,
he was.
Absolutely.
That's a picture of him from better days. He was all white cat. He loved to sleep on my chest at night. I mean, suffocating me at times, sure, but listen, not every relationship is perfect.
Correct.
But he was a good man.
What I liked about Walker was he avoided me so many times that I was at your house. But then after I had been at your house, I would say probably maybe a half dozen times, I think that he had seen me enough that you could see that he had given me the benefit of the doubt and suddenly allowed himself to be approached. And then immediately, like, his personality came out. He was very wary of me in the beginning, but he absolutely was a real one.
He was a little skittish. The anti-anxiety medication he was on helped that. So we will miss this little guy. I mean, we still got a bunch of cats and a dog running around here, but Walker was my cat. I wasn't a cat guy beforehand, but Walker definitely made me a cat. And all I can hope is, it's a rough time. I can only hope that those people close to me support me. Do not do anything mean or hurtful in the coming hours. So that's all I can say about that.
Who would do anything mean or hurtful to you?
I'm not quite sure. I'm just throwing that out there.
I feel like that was a vague.
Thanks to everybody in the comments for their kind words.
Well, I think that's because everybody is supportive of you and truly cherishes you, your feelings, your emotions, as well as those of Mrs. Ron. And I'm surprised that you would think that anybody would be mean to you ever.
And as usual, William knocked it out of the park with the comments that Walker's interactions with Brian seem to be very consistent with just about everyone's. I mean, we do always say approach Brian with caution. So if you do see him out in the wild, just be very careful.
I don't get that. I really don't get that reputation. I think I'm very approachable and very likable.
All right. Up next, you know him, you love him. Hopefully you cash in on him. It's NFL Locks of the Week.
Locks.
Oh, Brian, my friend. Again, Thursday night, you started off with a heater. You said Carolina plus 1.5. You're like, Atlanta is too inconsistent. Go with the Panthers. Sure enough, Panthers win 25-15. And then you had to sweat it out a little bit this afternoon. Kansas City minus 9.5 versus those pesky Jacksonville Jaguars. Kansas City barely covering, winning by 10, 27-17. But again, keeping you perfect at 20-0 through week 10.
Well, Ron, I think that it's important that people accept the fact that at the end of the day, part of the fun of gambling on NFL games is that tight wire of emotions of will I cover, will I not cover. One of the things that the Ron and Brian podcast with our Locks of the Week provides the listeners of this show is just that extra comfort, that safety blanket, that security of knowing that at the end of the day, our picks are going to win. So while most of the world was watching the Chiefs, Jaguars, with a sense of tension, people who knew that I had issued it as a lock of the week were quite comfortable and never scared.
They were settled in.
Absolutely. But Ron,
yes.
I would like to also point out that you're such a humble person that here you are complimenting me for going 2-0 on week 10 of the NFL season. But you yourself also raised your season record to 20-0 with a 2-0 showing in week 10. Cowboys -3 over the Packers. You sat there and said, listen, Brett Favre, he is looking down from heaven at Aaron Rodgers, and he is going to grace Mr. Rodgers with a win after last week's embarrassing loss to the Lions. Cowboys laying 3. You sat there and said, Packers don't need those points. Oh, a thrilling overtime victory. Packers 31-28. Ron, you picked that with such clarity. But your other pick was such a reminder to the world of your ability to look into a crystal ball and to see calm waters when a storm approaches. Bills laying 7.5 over the Vikings in Buffalo. You sat there and said Buffalo overrated. Vikings have a 7-1 record. They should be laying points, not giving. Vikings win 33-30. Ron, also 2-0. How did you do it again?
Well, another early prediction here that Kirk Cousins will be NFL MVP. Again, he just showed why that is. Staying calm. And again, this was one when the Bills were up 27-10. I'm sure there were people out there that were sweating it. Not me. I knew that this was, pretty much in the bag. I knew the cover was inevitable. The win was just kind of a little cherry on top.
It's just impressive. And what I find so amazing and yet at the same time bewildering is that you go onto these sports websites, these ESPNs, Vegas Insider, CBS Sports. I could go on. And you've got so-called experts issuing their picks. And yet, what I'm so amazed by is how these so-called paid experts in sports odds picking are not sitting there looking at what Ron and Brian are putting out, because they consistently pick wrong teams. They pick losers. Whereas if they just simply followed the Ron and Brian method of picking winners, they also would be sitting there at the end of week 10 staring at a 20-0 record. Ron, who do you have in week 11?
Let's see. I like Cincinnati. They're on the road at Pittsburgh. Cincy -5.5, and then Buffalo. Tough loss today. I think they get back on the winning side next week. They've got Cleveland coming to town. Buffalo -7. Put your money on it.
All right. I'm not saying I disagree with you, but I saw two other clear winners for week 11.
Mm-hmm.
Giants laying 4 over the Lions. This seems to be a no-brainer to me, folks. Also, the Commanders in Washington. There seems to be early movements for Dan Snyder to sell the team, to get out from the black cloud. I believe the team is excited and empowered to drive up the value of the team. And how do they do that? By winning games. Laying 2.5 over the Texans. Take Washington all the way, baby. Week 11.
All right. I think that's your very first time picking Washington this season. But again, it's a lock of the week, folks.
Lock of the week.
So, Brian, this past week, very exciting. Election Day in America this past Tuesday. Many people were saying red wave. Is there something you'd like to point out before we get into election night?
Something I would like to point out? No,
Yes.
it's just, I feel like there's something weighing my shirt down right now. And yet at the same time, Ron, I feel so GQ fashionable. I believe that I should be, I feel I have the same confidence as people who walk the runway for a Louis Vuitton fashion show during Paris Fashion Week. I feel so, the accoutrements to my outfit right now are amazing. I feel like I put every surfer at a TGI Fridays to shame. The flair that I am bringing to the table this week, I believe is something that I should not keep from the world. This is something that I should share.
All right.
This
How
is
would you like to
something-
share this, Brian?
Ron, I would like to say that the fashion accessory of 20 2022. Winter season is upon us. Ron, please pull up the photo of the new item we will be selling starting tomorrow on the Ron and Brian website. Oh, what is that, people? Is that a Ron lapel pin that people could purchase to put on their clothing? Ronnie, please describe the photo that was used.
I believe this is an old photo of me from one of my my company websites.
Ron, now that looks like there's only one. That was only one was made. Is that the case?
It does not appear that way. It seems like you have
multiple were made.
Multiple
pins were made. People, listen. I'm going to hold it up to the camera, Ron. If we can zoom in.
We don't have Zoom on our cameras, so you'll have to.
Yeah, but if you could pull me up and put me as the only screen on this then we could see this much better. People, this is, here we go. Look at this. This is, we'll just,
I mean,
here we go.
There you go. There you go.
There you go. Look at this beauty, people. This is a pin. It actually exists. You all want a Ron corporate photo mugshot pin. Now, these will be on our websites for $5. We will also be giving this away for free to anybody who is a member of our Patreon at the bronze level or higher.
Well, that is a special deal then.
Now, I feel that it is warranted. The people who are the people who support the show, we support. So anybody who is a bronze or higher level member of our Patreon will receive your own official Ron coffee mug pin that you can wear proud to any corporate meeting. You can wear to funerals. They're quite the talking piece. And this is something that I believe will, how do I say this? Will say to the world that you are an amazing person.
I mean, it will definitely, it'll say something. There will be words.
Ron, do you believe Mrs. Ron will wear her Ron coffee mug corporate photo?
Somehow I feel that she might not.
Really?
Would be my guess. I'm just saying.
What if I attached it to a sticker of her?
I think she would be upset with you, as she often is.
People, you can own this. It's a pin. It's a pin with Ron's photo, and he did not know they existed just a few moments ago.
I knew lapel pins existed. I just was not aware of what you were doing.
Look how good I look with it on my shirt. Like right now you're thinking, Brian, terrible. You're wearing a blue button-down shirt. Disgusting. Whoa, what is that you have? Oh, wait a second. This is so amazing. You are the best dressed man in America. And
now,
what did it?
Janelle is asking for a Brian mugshot pin. And as it so happens, I was gifted with a photo of Brian this past weekend that I feel will be made into a lapel pin very shortly as well. So maybe we'll have a set. Maybe we'll start an Etsy store and put something out there.
You son of a bitch. I sent that to you and Mrs. Ron only. I did not share that photo publicly. That photo was not for public consumption. These are the photos that Ron gets. As a result, if you want in on the Wordle competition, let us know.
Yes.
Because when Ron and Mrs. Ron come in with a 3 out of 6 and Brian chimes in with a 5 out of 6, you get photos like that.
Things get ugly, my friends. Things get ugly. All right.
Ron?
Yes.
What's going on in the world?
Well, we had, as we were mentioning, Election Day here in the United States back on Tuesday. Prior to election night, people were saying it was going to be a red wave. It was going to be a red tsunami. What it appears to have turned into is the best midterm election for any party holding the White House in the last 80 years. It would appear that Democrats will maintain hold on the Senate, may actually pick up a seat depending on how the Georgia runoff goes on December 6th. And we are still waiting for a number of House results. It does appear that Republicans will take control of the House again, but nowhere near at the numbers that they were expecting. And also, Kevin McCarthy does not appear that he will have an easy road to being Speaker of the House again. You've got a bunch of MAGA Republicans that appear ready to challenge him for that leadership role. So not a great day for the GOP, but a great day for Ron and Brian, as we weren't mentioned in public. We were a little upset by that, but we understand.
A little bit.
But the Fetterman campaign did reach out to us the day after the election, after Dr. Oz has conceded, and said, they felt the campaign ads that we ran against Dr. Oz might have had some impact. Should we play one just to refresh people's memory?
Well, I mean, based on the focus groups that were coming out of the ballot boxes on Tuesday, I mean, people were, being asked, what are the most impressive reasons that you voted the way you did? And one of the issues that kept popping up was clearly the ads that were running on the Ron and Brian podcast of last week. So please, Ron, I think it's important to show what was the reason that most people voted the way they did.
Let's play one of our Dr. Oz ads.
Dr. Oz, the man who made Dr. Phil the second most annoying doctor that Oprah introduced into our lives. If you wouldn't let Dr. Phil check your prostate, don't vote Oz. Fake TV Doctors for America is responsible for this message.
So not only did we collect that sweet, sweet PAC money, we also helped influence, I guess the country, if you will.
Absolutely.
That flipping of the Senate seat from red to blue, obviously one of the big ways that the Democrats were able to hold the Senate in these midterm elections.
Of course, I think it was very impressive. I would also like to welcome Lame Dad 2, asking us, what are we talking about?
If we only knew. We have no idea.
That is a mystery for the ages. Lame Dad 2. I'd like to know, who's Lame Dad 1? Like, is that Lame Dad 2's father?
Possibly.
Is this like what was the pirate from Pirate Dreaded? What was the Princess Bride pirate name?
The pirate. Don't know. Don't remember. Drawing a blank.
I don't remember it, but I remember it was like a legacy name, like it had just been passed down from generations.
Was it Dred Scott? No,
it was Dred something. Dred Scott was the Supreme Court case of separate but equal. Could be wrong.
Dred Johnny
Ron,
Depp?
I feel like we are now Dred Pirate Roberts. Nope. Allie's been drinking. It's very clear. She's drinking a 10.5 ABV beer right now. So we're gonna steer clear. But clearly it is an amazing time for this country. One of the things that seems to have been universal in terms of the acknowledgments is that the millennials really showed up in force this year across the nation. The number of people 25 and under who came out and voted was a very incredibly strong block of votes numerically. For the first time, it really seems like the young generation came out and participated in the electoral process. In many states, in all honesty, when compared, it looked as if the millennials outnumbered the elderly, which has been one of the strongest consistent voting blocks in the country. So there were so many cases. I mean, one of the things that was most surprising about this recent election was just how it was expected that Republican Congress candidates were expected to win and did not come out. The Senate was expected to turn red. We already have locked in a 50-50 split. And it's quite possible we end up with a 51-49 Senate where the Democrats actually do not need to lean upon a vice president to break a tie. The House, which was expected to be plus 20 Republican Congress people, is up in the air to the point where it's possible that the Democrats do not lose any votes in the House. Ron, you even said last week that you were expecting a swing to the right. What do what were your takeaways?
I mean, so big takeaway, as you mentioned, heavy Gen Z vote. 27% of Americans between the ages of 18 and 29 cast a ballot, the second highest youth turnout rate for a midterm in the last 30 years, and 2/3 of those candidates backed Democratic candidates. And so that is a trend that seems to be continuing from 2020, where younger voters, lean more Democratic or moderate than they do towards the GOP. And as a result, what did we see in the days following the elections, Brian? Conservative pundits saying we need to raise the voting age to 21.
I was so surprised that was the that was the direction that the right decided to take, which I think is, considering that they are representing a majority number of votes, that they would immediately sit there and say, hey, how do we publicly decide to silence a large majority of the future voters?
Right.
Right. It just feels like it is such an incredibly unpopular move and such a short-sighted stance to take, that it was just wild. I mean, I could not even fathom that was. I could never have predicted that was going to be the response the right was going to take.
Right. And a number of people pointed out, because, math not a strong suit for a lot of these conservative pundits. If you were to raise it by the 2024 election, a large chunk of that voting block would still be 21 by the next presidential election. So it really would do nothing but to really energize the voters into voting against you 2 years from now.
Yeah. It's so wild. I mean, it literally, and it's one of the things that I feel like the Republican, or at least, let me rephrase it, the right, we'll just call it the right, because I don't even feel like the Republican Party is, by the way, I feel comment of the week right there, Janelle, nailing it with a single period. Like just Janelle, once again, nailing it with the comment. But I just feel that the Republican Party, at least that is the vocal faction of that party, it is they are clinging to an increasingly unpopular stance, which I find just such a it is like watching people fall off of a cliff with their back to the edge, in denial that something is going to happen. It's to sit there and say that there is that the road for them for success is to limit the number of voters. Again, all that will do is alienate the next generation of voters. It may get you victory in the short term, but once these people, even if you do raise the voting age somehow magically, with whatever level of magic you can spew out there, if you do somehow successfully manage to raise the voting age from 18 to 21, when these people hit 21, they will be fucking pissed.
Exactly.
They are not going to be voting Republican. It is just so wild to me how short-sighted the Republican strategy is, which is that, well, let's try and get this incredible short-term win, but let's forego the long-term stability of the party and of the views of the, one of the things that I find so fascinating right now, at least for the past week, you commented to me multiple times over the course of the week, is the immediate split that took place starting Tuesday morning in the Republican right, which was half the party seems to be starting to cannibalize over Donald Trump's influence on the party and how it's time to move on.
Right.
I mean, we know New York Post has been such a friend to the Ron and Brian podcast in terms of providing content, not only to our podcast, but also to After Dark with their constant stream of OnlyFans stories. If you guys want to follow, go to patreon.com/Ron and Brian podcast.
Nice.
But the idea is just that watching the right sit there for this past week, trying to figure out, do they want to line up with Donald Trump over the next 2 years, or do they want to line up with Ron DeSantis, who is the Republican star right now, as he got easily reelected as governor of Florida?
Yeah, and that was something that people pointed out is, when you look at Trump-backed candidates, most of them lost, with the exception of, I think, J.D. Vance in Ohio, of which the RNC had to pump like $30 million into that campaign to drag him across the finish line. Whereas down in Florida, to your point, previous election, Ron DeSantis barely winning the governorship, but defeating Charlie Crist handily by, I think, about 14 points.
Right.
So kind of showing that maybe his playbook is a little bit more effective than the Trump playbook moving forward. And everyone, I didn't see a lot of people coming to Donald Trump's defense over the past week.
No, and I think it's going to be very interesting how this all plays out. One of the things that I read this past week, I believe it was on Reason.com. I read it first on Reason.com, and then I saw it in a couple other media outlets throughout the week, is that one of the Democratic strategies was actually during the primary season to support far-right candidates on the Republican side, which was to cut the knees out of the moderate Republicans such that they went out there and actually supported far-right candidates during the Republican primaries, such that when we went to the general election, we had a moderate Democrat running against a far-right candidate, so that when the general election rolled by, it was basically when you're the moderate America went to vote, they were provided two different candidates, and the vote really streamed towards the left. I actually found that a very dangerous precedent to set. I think it's actually very dangerous for political parties to interfere in the primary seasons of the opposing parties, and at the same time, politics is a dirty war.
It is.
And you need to, winning is the objective. I thought it was, I kudos to the Democratic Party for getting their hands dirty, which is not something you have seen in many years. Usually the only times they get their hands dirty is, nope, I'm not going to say it. I was going to.
You were
going to say it, but I'm reeling myself back, Ron. Reeling myself back.
Brian, a more important question that I have to put to you.
Sure.
What are you watching?
Oh my God, Ron. I've watched so many things, and this is coming from somebody who does not watch a lot of things. The first thing I watched was Facing Nolan on Netflix. It's a documentary on famed pitcher Nolan Ryan, who has the most no-hitters, the most one-hitters, and the most two-hitter complete games as a pitcher in baseball. Basically, he is the most dominating pitcher in all of baseball history. Texan, grew up in a small town, started his career with the New York Mets, went to the California Angels, went to the Houston Astros, played with the Texas Rangers. Fascinating documentary. Would rate it, I would say, a 7 out of 10.
Okay.
Probably could have been better, except for the fact that they used a Texan voiceover actor who approached it with a good old boy kind of voice styling, which I found quite irritating. I also watched The Bear on Hulu for season 1. I know season 2 should be coming out soon.
Yeah, that's the cooking show, right? Well, not a cooking show, but it's based in a restaurant.
Yes, it is about a Michelin-rated chef from New York who relocates to Chicago to focus his efforts on his family's low-level beef, sliced beef sandwich restaurant, and the struggles he has in keeping the restaurant. Apparently, his brother, right before the show starts, his brother, who he had an estranged relationship with, committed suicide, and his brother was running the restaurant, leaves it to him. So it's all about his struggles trying to maintain the restaurant and keep it from going out of business. I enjoyed it. I would give it a solid 7 out of 10.
Okay.
You know me, I love watching anything cooking related. Made me hungry. I also watched Ari Shafir, comedian, friend of the show. Ari
Yes.
Shafir released his new special on YouTube called Jew, which is all about the Jewish religion, the pros and the cons, but done in a very sarcastic manner. Highly recommend it, people. If you have an hour and a half, go to YouTube, watch Ari Shafir's special Jew. The last thing I watched was on Netflix. It is a documentary called Aftershock, Everest and the Nepal earthquake. It took place in 2015. Basically, an earthquake happens at the exact moment that over 100 people are in the process of trying to climb Mount Everest. It takes wiped out entire towns, practically destroyed the city of Kathmandu. And the one thing that I found most interesting about it was the fact that because it happened so close to Mount Everest, there were so many cameras that were capturing what the climbers who were on Mount Everest at the time. Listeners of the show and any friend of mine know that I'm absolutely obsessed with Mount Everest.
You are.
Which is the highest mountain or the tallest mountain in the entire world. So I highly, for people who are interested in that, this is a documentary. So it is all footage that was shot during it, tells 3 different stories at the same time. Highly recommend it. Ron, without
Yes.
Dominating the show,
No,
what are you watching?
So this week on Netflix, I watched Inside Man. Just a 4-episode season. It is the story of a man on death row, Stanley Tucci, who murdered his wife and is on death row. And
Stanley Tucci, the actor?
Stanley Tucci, the actor, and he basically solves cases. He's a murderer that solves cases. And you have the story of David Tennant, who is a vicar in Great Britain. Yes, you're calling timeout.
I'm sorry to interrupt. So is it actually Stanley Tucci, the actor?
Well, he's playing a character, Brian. He didn't actually murder his wife.
So this isn't a documentary. This is a.
I did not say it was a documentary. I said it was a series. So
Okay,
it is a
obviously,
TV.
7.7% ABV beers just go right to my head. I immediately thought this was a documentary where Stanley Tucci steps in and solves crimes.
So there are, I would say, overall, I would also give this a 7 out of 10. I think it is very well acted. I think there are parts of the story that are extremely over the top. But I think, again, it doesn't stretch itself out. It's 4 pretty tight episodes, with the final episode being the best, kind of how you'd want it to be. So I would be interested to see if it comes back for a second season. I would.
May I ask, what are the 4 crimes that are
Well, it's not
discussed?
necessarily. So it basically it kind of goes off on a tangent. It's the crimes that he's trying to solve are a little bit incidental because there is a second storyline going on involving David Tennant, which Stanley Tucci, you find out, is also working on. So you're kind of seeing these 2 stories play out side by side.
May I ask, what is the story of David Tennant? It sounds very familiar. I know the name. I just cannot place it.
He was he was Doctor Who. I think if you saw him, you'd recognize his face.
He's not my Doctor Who.
He's not your Doctor Who.
No, he's not my Doctor Who.
He is a vicar with a family, and he gets involved in the most. If I tried to explain the situation, it wouldn't even make sense. You kind of have to watch it play out. But he gets involved in a bad situation.
Okay. What else are you watching?
So I watched on the Roku channel, which I know you were against another channel, but the Roku channel apparently is free, as I came to find out. watched Weird, the biopic of Weird Al Yankovic.
Hold on, that's available for
Daniel
free?
Radcliffe is available for free. Just download the Roku channel app, and you'll be able to watch it. You have to watch some ads during the movie. That's all you have.
Okay.
To do. So I would say it was good. It was over the top, which is kind of something you expect. Did you ever see UHF, Weird Al's?
Of course.
Movie? And you know how that was just very over the top, kind of stupid at times, like that kind of humor.
But also wonderfully weird.
Right, exactly.
Like it was wonderfully weird. Like there were moments where like it just felt too weird.
Right.
But as somebody who enjoys a weird sense of humor, I loved UHF.
Then I would say if you like Weird Al, if you like UHF, you will like this biopic. There are a ton of cameos. I mean, it's almost over the top with the number of cameos. And just, I think the first half is a little bit better than the second half. During the first half, there were parts where I was literally just laughing out loud. It was just, again, so extreme and over the top. I would call it a good watch. I'd give it an 8.2 out of 10, Brian. I've
already bookmarked it. I will be watching it. Yes.
All right. And that's about it. I just watched a lot of football today. Other than that,
okay.
That's about it. What else we have? We have a ton of weird news to
We're going to have to steamroll through this because we are already 46 minutes into this episode. And one thing I will say, people, is that after this show, we are not done.
No.
We are going into After Dark, which is our Patreon-only show. Those people who are currently Patreon members at the bronze level or higher, they are paying $10 a month or more, and they will absolutely stand up and attest. They are receiving after each show that we do live, we do an extra bonus episode behind the paywall. These are stories that we could not get away with talking on YouTube about. We could not get away with Facebook. The algorithm would absolutely shadow ban us. But these are stories that Ron and I want to talk about. So the way we were able to figure it out is we do an extra minimum 30 minutes every week. We stream it live after we do the podcast for our Patreon members. We also put it up for people to watch after the fact. The only way to access this content, if you're enjoying what you're watching, but saying, listen, these stories aren't sexy enough. Why am I not hearing about women getting plastic surgeries so they can show naked pictures of themselves on OnlyFans? Those are the stories we talk about on After Dark. So go to our website, ronandbrianpodcast.com. There's a link on the upper right-hand corner where it says Become a Patreon. Sign up at the bronze level or higher. Not only will you earn yourself some free exclusive Ron and Brian merch, but you also will get every week a link to just exclusive content of stuff that, how do I say, is a little bit spicier than what we talk about during the podcast, as well as one of the things we like to do, which is at the last Sunday of every month, we do something called the Pajama Party. Ron, tell us what a pajama party is.
I mean, it's when we allow you, our Patreon subscribers, to come on the show with us, to join the show, to just sit and chat, have a good time. Sometimes we have games. Sometimes we play Can You Beat Ron? We didn't do it this past month, but I think we're planning on doing it for this month. So
there will absolutely be a November Can You Beat Ron? It may be Thanksgiving themed.
Possibly.
But it may not. Maybe. But it may not.
So, but anyway. Let's get into the weird news, Brian. We've
do the weird news.
Let's get into it. So, 2 Alabama residents allegedly kidnapped a teenage girl to Florida, where she was beaten, bound, and dumped under a tree. You're saying to yourself, well, that doesn't seem that weird. There's a lot of stuff like that happens all over the place. Well, one of them was wearing a superhero cape and a purple wig while doing so. This is Molly Michelle Garrett. She has been charged in the abduction of the girl. Her and her acquaintance, Kobe Jerome Jordan, they picked up the girl who was a minor a day earlier, and they took her to an abandoned building where Jordan allegedly beat the girl, bound her hands and feet, and then a short time later dropped her off under a tree.
I wish Allie was on right now because she would explain what exactly is a raven costume.
It's a good question. Maybe Raven is a superhero. I mean, it is a superhero outfit, so.
Those
so
are
anyway.
some super thighs, if you ask me.
So anyway, Jordan was charged with robbery, false imprisonment, tampering with a victim, and battery. And then Jarrett was charged in first-degree counts of robbery, false imprisonment. So I don't know if she'll wear the outfit to where the hell did Brian just go to? I come back from this story and I just see an empty chair. Next up,
I'm getting a beer. I told you I was getting a beer.
I wasn't listening. We need to work on
Oh, that's a
communication.
shame, Ron. I was getting a beer.
Next up, tough day at work for a Caterpillar employee who fell into a vat of iron on just his 9th day on the job back this
Now that's
past
got to
June.
break a couple bones. I mean, iron we know is one of the strongest metals in the chemical world. I mean,
Well,
iron.
this was
What,
molten.
Ron?
This was molten iron. So he was actually, from the police report, quote, immediately incinerated. So at least, hopefully, it was a very quick death for him.
So you're telling me, Ron, is that this was liquid iron
Yes.
that is at a superheated level,
Thousands
of degrees.
Over 2,000 degrees Fahrenheit, to be exact.
Now, how long do you think the human body stays conscious in 2,000-degree molten iron?
I mean, they say the gentleman, melting specialist Stephen Dirks, they say he was killed instantly. So I would say, like, it's so hot that I can't even imagine. Once you hit it, I would think you're just done for at that point. Can't be
Ron,
done.
where would you rank falling into molten iron? Where would you rank that in ways to die?
I mean, it's. I would put it top 10. It's a pretty brutal way to die. And apparently,
Now,
caterpillars.
you had said recently, I believe it was last week, you had said that ranked number 38 in ways to die is being stabbed by a woman in a Raven costume, and that would be Raven from Teen Titans, which is a DC book starring the first Robin once he aged out of being the Boy Wonder.
That was 38. This would be top 10. And now,
Really? Top 10. I love it.
And now apparently authorities are claiming that Caterpillar did not install federally required protective restraints or guardrails in the area where Dirks was working, and OSHA charged the company with a willful violation and proposed a fine of over $145,000. This is actually the second major incident in this location, which is in Mapleton, Illinois. In less than 12 months, back in December, a 50-year-old worker was killed at the same site after a fall from a, quote, significant height.
So you're telling me that a guy falls into molten lava and
Basically.
OSHA says, we're going to fine you 150 grand.
Basically, yes.
Wow. That is such an advertisement that the blue collar worker is worth nothing to the American government. I find that offensive. Ron and Brian, we are the voice of the blue collar worker, and we cannot let this stand.
I feel Caterpillar will probably be settling with his family for much more, though.
I believe that's 7 figures. What else do we have, Ron? We have plenty of articles.
We have a teen from Britain who got a USB cable stuck inside of his penis in a bizarre sexual experimentation. This is a 15...
We've all been there, Ron. We've all inserted a USB drive inside of our penis just to see, can we access files and with our kidneys, and it never works.
Well, the real reason is even dumber than that. So it was a 15-year-old boy, and he wanted to find out how big his penis was inside. So he decided to use a USB cable in order to measure it.
Ron, you don't by any chance have a photo of an
I'm not
X-ray
going-
of this man's genital area with the USB cable inside?
I mean, I can pull the photo up if you really want the photo.
I thought you had it lined up, my friend. This is the whole point of this article, and that's why I sometimes write in parentheses in our shared Google Doc. Once again, Matt Beaker, you need to when I put Matt, if you're listening, hold on. Matt, if you're listening to this to me right now, which I sure hope you do, because that's what we're paying you for. When I put in parentheses after a link with photo or with video, this is my cue, Matt, for you to download it. So this way you can put it up when Ron's talking about it. Holy shit, people. That man shoved an entire USB cable inside of his penis. Now, I'm going to tell you something. That man's penis is sticking out past the cable is sticking out past his hip sideways. I'm assuming that's a long penis, no?
I think part of it is outside of his body. I think he got the... I'm not sure which side he put in, but the only photo more disturbing than the X-ray is the photo they shared of the USB cable after being removed with a little bit of blood on it. Apparently after he inserted the USB cable, it got stuck inside of him and then somehow became tangled and knotted.
Oh my God.
So
now I have a question. How old was this person?
15.
1'5".
1'5", yes.
So it's safe to assume he's living with his parents.
You would think so, yes.
And I don't want to presume pronouns. In today's day and age, it could be a they, them with a penis. It could be a she, her who also has a penis. So I want to apologize for assuming pronouns. But can you imagine the conversation of that teenager as they walk out into their parents' living room, dripping blood on the floor with, hey, Ma, can you call a doctor because I've got something stuck in my penis.
So in order to remove it, they needed to make what is called a pinoscrotal incision. And then they had to put a metal rod up there to try and pull it out. But because of the knotting, they were unable to do so. So the doctors then had to cut up the section that was stuck between his genitalia and the anus so that they could get to the cable from underneath.
Oh my God!
Shockingly, the boy made a full recovery.
Now I'm going to tell you something. This boy is 15. So so if the article says that it's a boy, then we are going to follow. What was this? The British Sun article?
Probably, yeah.
We're going to follow. If the British Sun says that it's a boy, we're going to assume those pronouns. Can you possibly imagine this boy's first sexual experience when the girl says, "Hey, I'm going to put my finger in your pee hole. Take it like the bitch that you are." I mean, which is standard for first sexual experiences.
Sure. Yeah.
Can you just imagine the PTSD that is immediately going to come to this boy's mind as his girlfriend or her first sexual partner inserts her pinky finger inside of his urethra?
A good point from Billy. May still not be the worst penis story ever told in this podcast, which is true. The penis degloving story, I think it's going to take a lot for something to beat that.
The only thing that I believe made the penis degloving so powerful was that, first off, it was told during the early days of the pandemic. So it was one of the first episodes that you and I were streaming live, thanks to the internet capability of video streaming. And we were able to Google degloving at the same time that our listeners were. Because as we read the article, neither of us had looked up penis degloving. Right. And in real time, you and I were able to see examples of what a degloved penis was. And I'm going to say it a few times for those people who were not watching that episode so that they also can immediately Google right now, degloving, DEGLOV. Now I will say it right now. Delta, Echo, Gecko, Lima, Oscar, Vector.
But this time's gotta stop.
All right, moving on. An Arizona man allegedly killed his 80-year-old roommate and then pawned off the chainsaw that he used to dismember him with human remains still stuck in the blades of the chainsaw. This is a gentleman by the name of Thomas Wallace, age 58. He allegedly cut up his roommate, a former Air Force veteran, and stuffed his remains into trash bags and then wrapped them in linens in a Phoenix home that they shared. Police were called to do a welfare check by the victim's family, who hadn't heard from him in about a month. When authorities found their way into the home, which had a, quote, foul odor, they found trash bags stuffed with body parts and the victim's decapitated head. They also tracked like I said, they tracked the chainsaw to a pawn shop and found a chainsaw that had pieces of flesh, ligaments, and other biological matter on it.
So this is not what we would call a criminal mastermind.
No, not exactly.
I will say this guy looks damn good for 58. I mean, he's got more darker hair on his head than I do. Okay. Right off the bat. I mean, we're going to acknowledge that. Does he look slightly more confused than I do? A little bit. But I will say, if I look this good at 58, after being arrested for using a chainsaw to chop up a human being into garbage bags, I would say I'm doing pretty well.
So Wallace has been charged of second-degree murder, as well as charges for concealing the body and trafficking stolen items from the victim. He is being held on $1 million cash bond.
Don't you think that is the ultimate disrespect to somebody, is to use their own chainsaw to grind up their body? I mean, at least, what a disrespect. I mean, if you're going to kill somebody with a chainsaw, use your own. Don't use theirs. Come on, people.
And at the very least, clean the chainsaw prior to selling it off. I mean, that's just polite for the next owner.
Absolutely. Ron, I feel like we got time for like two more stories.
All right. So this story I found, I don't know why I found it fascinating, because I guess people in powerful positions can be just as crazy as the rest of us.
Sure.
But the CFO of Tyson Foods, John Tyson, was arrested this past week for entering a stranger's house and passing out in her bed. We, of course, have his mugshot here. He was arrested for public intoxication and trespassing. The 32-year-old was found asleep at 2 a.m. last Sunday in the bed of a college-age woman who arrived home late to discover that her front door was apparently unlocked. She called police thinking that it might be a burglary, and then said she found a male that she did not know asleep in her bed.
Why does it look like he's at a barber shop? I mean, the smock he is wearing is very similar to what my barber uses before he cuts these luscious locks. People, listen, if you are out and you are getting inebriated, or you are using controlled substances, I mean, please, for the benefit of the Ron and Brian podcast, please do it in the safety and comfort of your own home. Do not end up in somebody else's bed. I mean, this is not okay.
And he may just have that smock on because it appears that he stripped down prior to falling asleep in this bed. And then when officers woke him up, he briefly sat up. And then, according to the police report, quote, did not verbally respond, and then laid back down and attempted to go back to sleep.
That's going to be it's going to be a great quarterly financial conversation the next time they're reviewing the audited financials. Looks at the cops and then decides he's going to go back to sleep. How drunk do you have to be?
I don't know. Like, I mean, you and I, we've had some nights that we've been out.
Sure.
We've been out drinking.
We're still talking about the Albany Arena football day.
Exactly. This will give you an idea as to how drunk he may have been. Here is a picture of him in the holding cell, just in like a pair of like shorts or boxers or whatnot, and he is clearly falling asleep again, leaning back against that wall.
Yeah. Ooh, that's rough. That is absolutely rough. And I would like to encourage that police officer standing over him. Please go to Bally's, sign up for a membership. Jacqueline Lane, um, Weight Watchers, Trim Spa. I mean, you have plenty of options.
Right. What else do we have here, Brian? I'll let you pick the final story of
You
the
want
week.
me to pick the final
Yeah,
story?
why not?
Okay, well, I'm going
Oh.
to say there's a story in Weird News that we put set aside for nurse cuts off dying man's foot without permission for taxidermy display.
Why would you do that?
Why would I do that, or
Well,
why
not
would the
you.
nurse?
Why
do
would
that?
anybody do that?
I don't know, and that is what is so fascinating. I think one of the as somebody who has spent time in the hospital system in 2022, I know you yourself spent plenty of time when your mother was ill last year. There were so many people that were caring for a loved one that provided you comfort in knowing that when you had to walk away at the end of the day to go back home, that your loved one was being taken care of, that they were being provided care. My father was in hospitals and rehab centers for over 6 months before he passed away. And one of the things I knew at the end of the day was that there were people who genuinely were taking care of him. And here's somebody who took a job in that line of work that really wasn't looking out for the care for the sick. You
No.
agree, Ron?
I would agree. So apparently it was a frostbitten foot of a dying man. This is a nurse in Wisconsin hospice,
Sure.
Mary Brown. So she allegedly cut off the victim's right foot without his permission or a doctor's permission, and told a fellow nurse that she intended to exhibit it in her family's taxidermy shop with a sign saying, quote, "Wear your boots, kids."
How do we not end on that story right there? And by the way, celebrity obituaries are clearly the people are demanding, Ron, that you comment on the loss of Aaron Carter and
I thought that was last week. We talked about Aaron Carter. I reluctantly cashed in on those 66 points in the Ron and Brian death pool, and I'm now sitting solidly in second place with just a little over a month and a half left. So we will see how the rest of the year plays out. Two-time defending champion Andrew H. Not even on the board yet. I think when you talk about shocks in the 2022 Ron and Brian death pool, I think the Aaron Carter death is second to Andrew, basically pitching a shutout at this point.
Sure.
So,
I think the second shocker is that Brian, who had Aaron Carter in 2020 and 2021 in his death pool, decided this year to get off Aaron Carter, while Death did not get off Aaron Carter.
Nope.
Wasted points once again, Brian, pitifully so far behind. Ron, I'm going to say I thought this was a stellar episode.
It's a good time.
70 minutes we've put in. The people are just so happy. Lame Dad, 20 whatever he was, decided to chime in. We're so welcome to have you a member of the Ron and Brian universe. Also, people, don't forget, if you are a member of the Patreon, go to your email, send an email to Ron and Brian podcast at gmail.com with your name, your username on Patreon, as well as your home address. We will mail you your very own corporate Ron lapel pin, which is what we're calling this, the corporate Ron lapel pin. Ron, look at me. Do not look away. Look at me when I'm holding this up to the camera, because this is a moment that you should always be proud of, to honor. I will be mailing 2 lapel pins to you and Mrs. Ron to wear at your next external event. And for those who are not members of our Patreon, first off, shame on you. Also, you will have to pay $5 plus shipping and handling fees. So email ronandbrianpodcast@gmail.com with your request for Ron Lapel Pit.
All right. Anything additional before we wrap up this week's show, Brian?
Ron, the only thing I would like to add right now is that I cannot imagine my life without you. I am so glad to have you in my life. I am so glad to be able to spend 1 hour every Sunday night doing this podcast with you. And also at the same time to be surrounded by friends of the show who go, just week in, week out. They are, in the comment section, absolutely providing entertainment. People who are listening right now to the audio version, you're missing out. You're missing out on the quality comments that our friends are putting in there. Check it out on YouTube, Facebook, Twitch. Join the universe. Join the Ron and Brian podcast universe.
Yep.
Don't miss out.
At all. Well, I appreciate it, my friend. I feel the same way. Love doing this hour plus with you every Sunday night, as well as the After Dark, which will be starting in a mere 19 minutes. So if you haven't hopped on the Patreon train, go to ronandbrianpodcast.com, sign up, and as you know, an added piece of merch will be the lapel pin that Brian sends out to you. So thank you for joining us. Patreon members, we will see you shortly. Everybody else, we will see you next week.
Thank you for joining us on the Ron and Brian podcast. We're live each week on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitch. You can find prior episodes, links to our social media, and everything else Ron and Brian at ronandbrianpodcast.com. See you again.